Evening, everyone. Is it live? I think it's live. So, there's a few things going on today, I suppose. Um, should we start off with the Rachel Reeves thing? That I was going to go with. I'm going to show you a couple. Let's go through first of all the front pages today. Some of the front pages of the newspapers. So this is the press we're talking about. So inevitably, yes, we're going to get on to, I suppose. Could media reform deal with this? So, Reeves on brink over tax lies. So, what are these tax lies? Well, let's go down to another one. Daily Mail. Liar Reeves must go now. She knew there was no black hole in public finances, but kept that secret to hike taxes in Benefit Street budget. Right? So, kept it secret. Like, the government always keeps the budget secret. Like when people have been asking, like Kemi Badnoch's been asking Keir Starmer about the budget, he's going to say, you'll find out when it's the budget, right? We're not allowed to say yet. So what's this about? Well, if you recall, I'm just going to get rid of that for now. If you recall, months and months ago, I seem to think it was early summer. Correct me if I'm wrong. You started to see these things coming out about, the Rachel Reeves. It was round about the time where sort of a lot of things were going wrong. We had that image of Rachel Reeves crying in Parliament, obviously, which is down. It wasn't down to personal circumstances. It was down to something. And I think I know what it was. But nonetheless, the papers started going, there's this massive hole in her budget. And they were talking about 30 billion, 40 billion, even 50 billion pounds. This 50 billion pound black hole had opened up in her budget. And they were all doing it, all the papers, like even The Guardian. There's this group of economists. And I said at the time, look, I can well believe that there's been a bit of a hole appeared, potentially, because, first of all, Trump's tariffs. He announced those in April. So Rachel Reeves had put her budget in order in March, and the OBR had said, yeah, this is now fine. She had to do a couple of adjustments, but they went, yeah, this is okay. Then in April, Trump announces his tariffs. Now, yes, he'd said tariffs were on the way, so it's not unexpected. But nonetheless, the OBR couldn't take that into account in their forecast. Now they could because they've been announced, right? So that's obviously going to put a bit of a hole in it. Secondly, she had intended to save billions of pounds a year by restricting access to who could get PIP. So that inevitably added another bit of a hole. Then we also know at the time that after that rebellion, we know that Downing Street it was widely reported, very much off the record, but widely reported, that Downing Street had given the nod to the Treasury. Yeah, we need to scrap the 2-child cap on universal credit now to keep Labour MPs cushy, right? Because Labour MPs were in, not unreasonably. I said I fully supported it, but not unreasonably, but in rebellious mood. So it was like, right, okay, we've shit the bed here. We need to sort it out. So those three things you can well believe have opened up a bit of a hole. And then when it's announced that Labour are not going to announce the budget till late November, which is very late. When there's some adjustment needed, they're doing that because the economic news was expected to be better later in the year. So again, it was all to reduce the size of that deficit, if you like. It's not a real deficit, but that OBR deficit, we might call it, that difference between national debt as a share of GDP now and what the OBR computer says it would be in 5 years' time. But nonetheless, this idea that this hole was like 40 billion or 50 billion. Where did that come from? Didn't come from the Treasury. Where did it come from? A group of economists work it out. And I said at the time, I did a video at the time going, that group of economists do not have access to the Treasury data. The only people who have any idea what the state of the finances in is one, the Treasury, and two, the OBR. No one else. If it doesn't come from either of those sources, then it's pure speculation based on figures you don't have, right? Based on figures you do not have. So, all through summer, but they were still insisting they've got this massive hole. Rachel Reeves is a disaster, right? Then in September, look what she said, right? This was in the BBC. This is September, so this is still like a couple of months ago. Rachel Reeves has rejected forecasts of a £50 billion black hole in the public finances, despite higher borrowing costs and so that was the other ones, yeah. So the whole may have appeared. We do know that borrowing costs went up as well. So sorry, that was another potential thing. And expected tax rises piling pressure on the Chancellor ahead of the autumn budget. In an exclusive interview with the BBC, Reeves hit back at reports speculating over her plans, arguing a lot of them are talking rubbish. So basically, the press are saying, all through summer, all through the rest of autumn, there's this, Rachel Reeves has got this black hole to deal with. She's got this black hole to do. It's like 50 billion quid. Rachel Reeves says, I think you're talking rubbish, mate. And now, let me go back to it. And now that the budget's out and the OBR report is out, and we know the reality of the situation, which admittedly, yes, was better. You know, it's better now than it would have been a few months ago. A few months ago, there may well have been a bit of a hole. But still, liar Reeves must go. I'm like, what? She told you were talking rubbish. The rest of them as well. Reeves misled the public over fake fiscal black hole. No, the press did. All of them as well. All of them did it, including, as I say, The Guardian. They all went on about this black hole. She never said a word about a black hole. She didn't deny there was a black hole, right? But she did say the reports were mostly rubbish. Like, how are they getting away with this? Honestly. But the worst, I mean, there's some comments at the top about media reform again, and we do need media reform. We need three types of media reform. We do need press reform, Levinson too. We need broadcast media reform, but that's of Ofcom, right? The rules for broadcast media, as far as I can tell, are broadly okay. They're just not well enforced by Ofcom. So Ofcom need telling to sort their act out, or give them more teeth if that's what they need. And then the third, of course, the most important, arguably, is social media, right? Online media, which would actually include the press, basically, because they do most of their stuff online now. But in terms of press reform, I mean, I don't see how you could stop that. If the press want to report on unsubstantiated rumours or something, and then blame the government when it turns out their speculation wasn't true. I mean, that's what gets me. It's like they had all this speculation all summer and most of autumn, turned out not to be true, and that's somehow Rachel Reeves' fault. Why is it Rachel Reeves' fault? Because she didn't come out and well, she did come out. No, she did come out and say you're talking rubbish. She actually came out and said, where's it gone? Oh, I've got rid of it. Sorry, I deleted it. But I put it up before. She said, you are talking rubbish. It's mental. Like, the media in this country is absolutely mental. But the problem is, things like that, I don't know that you can reform. Because what reform can you put in place that says the media can't report on speculation? Because of course I talk about I do it from a point of view of good faith. So when I report on speculation, I'm not saying it's not biased. I mean, it clues in the name, right? But I exercise bias in terms of like what I report on. But I mean, I do it from a position of good faith. I don't report on something I do not have good reason to believe is true. So, but what reform can you come in to sort of force people? You can have a duty of accuracy. I've talked about that before, that you can't publish anything that is factually untrue. If you're publishing something that's on a factual basis, you have to have good reason to believe it's true. Now, the thing about the black hole is all of those press reports did say that this was based on this group of economists, right? So you could argue it wasn't untruthful. They gave a source for their speculation. And, economists, of course, can come up with these things. So I don't see how you come up with anything there. A headline has liar in quotes because it's a lie to call her a lie. Well, that's a good point as well. Yes, indeed. The Daily Mail one had liar. And I have pointed this out before. I'll put it up again just to show you. I have pointed this out before, haven't I, in my... whenever I've gone over how the press present things, or the media in general, I always say, watch out for quotation marks, because if they're using quotation marks, it's so that they can fall back on, we're just reporting what someone else said. Right. So this is probably Badnock or someone. But yeah, exactly. Always beware of quotation marks. Disgusts me that they've only just started calling fiscal drag a tax rise while they're defending it it is hyperbolic in 2023. Yeah, I've seen Tory MPs on Twitter talking about the fiscal drag as being a cruel policy. It's like, it's your policy. None of Labour's fiscal drag is in effect now, and it may never come to it. It may or may not, as I discussed in my video earlier this week. You know, if let's say the economy outgrows the OBR forecast, which it already has this year, and it may or may not, I don't know, but it might do. It may well be that Reeves then cancels the Labour part of the fiscal drag before it takes effect. She's got a couple of years to go. Like, it was the Tories that said that this fiscal drag was going to be in place until 2028. Now, yes, Labour could have cancelled it, but nonetheless, they didn't implement it. Any fiscal drag from beyond that date, if it's still in place then, that will be down to Labour, sure. But Labour may also cancel it before then. In which case, when they go to the next election, if they start talking about fiscal drag, they say, we didn't implement any fiscal drag. We didn't implement any. And then they can, and hopefully that's what they're planning to do as well. Chris, they're saying they are on about the original 22 billion black hole, hole in public finances left by the Tories. They're claiming the OBR report shows there was never a 22 billion black hole. Is that really what they're talking about? Hold on. That's even more ridiculous if that's actually what they're talking about. Let's have a look. What would we call it? OBR update to budget March 2024. Let's say. But I want it. Right, hang on a minute. I'm gonna have to. It's gonna. This is all. Why do they make it so difficult to find? Right. So I want that, but I want it from last year. Here we go. I can even put a link in the old description in the chat. So that's the OBR, where alongside Rachel Reeves's budget, they published a review of the March 2024 department expenditure limits. Hold on, let me just adjust this. Got a camera in the way. Right, let me just put it up. So they didn't say it was £22 billion, by the way, but they did say it was there. It's on the website. It says, on 29th of July, the chair of the Office of Budgetary Responsibility, Richard Hughes, informed the clerk to the Treasury Select Committee of the House of Commons of his initiation of a review into the preparation of the forecast for departmental expenditure limits in its March 2024 economic and fiscal outlook. So that's the last budget of Jeremy Hunt, the Tories. His letter stated that the review will assess the adequacy of the information assurances provided by the OBR by the Treasury regarding departmental spending, report to blah, 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 blah. While welcoming the important actions announced today by HM and Treasury to improve the transparency, so this is Labour now, and credibility of their institutional arrangements for forecasting, planning and controlling, Mr Hughes made it clear that the review would come to its own conclusions. But it does say, if we go down here, however, the net spending pressures highlighted in July would, if accommodated, have represented the largest year-ahead overspend of DEIs, except in the worst year of COVID costs. The size of this variance inevitably raised the question of whether the Treasury and OBR engaged sufficiently on the issues before the March forecast, and even within the limits of what was known at the time, made sufficient. The conclusion reached by the OBR is that had the information that has since been shared by the Treasury been made available to them at the time of the March budget, a materially different judgment about RDEL spending in 24-25 would have been reached. So the OBR there are saying that the Treasury withheld information from them. There was a black hole. They didn't say it's 22 billion, there is some argument about whether it is the 22 billion. The reason why some people quibble over it is Rachel Reeves included the cost of public sector pay increases, and some people think she shouldn't have done. But at the same time, the Tories didn't account for it in their March budget, so she thinks it's reasonable to account it. But there still was a black hole, and the OBR have a report on it saying so. So the Tories have complained that Labour ain't undone their job. Are they effing mad? They don't care, do they? At the end of the day, they're taking advantage of the fact that Labour, well, I say they're taking advantage, they're not really. All they're doing is shoving more votes to Reform UK, although they have fallen back a bit. But what they're attempting to do is take advantage of the fact that Labour are shit at communicating to the public. So if they tell their lies, it's always going to be backed up by most of the media anyway. Like, there's a good chunk of the media that are Tory client media. They're always going to back the Conservatives' position anyway, at least against Labour, not necessarily against Reform UK. That seems to be a bit split now. But against Labour, they will always back that. And then the other section of the media, who are not particularly pro-Tory, they are nonetheless anti-government. Whoever's in government, they're going to give them a hard time. They see that as their job, right? Fine, fair enough. But what it means is if Labour are not very good at managing those messages, then you need to take advantage. Was I buffering? Sorry. Do like the post-budget post from Professor Murphy. Worth catching up with if you can. Again, he went a bit grifter a couple of years ago, so I'll sort of leave him alone. And also remember, it's not that his opinion is completely invalid, because remember, he is an accountant, not an economist. But an accountant can have things to say about a budget. But also what I would say is he decided to turn grifter a couple of years ago. So you don't always know whether what he's saying is true or not, or whether he's just saying it because he likes the fame or infamy, however you want to put it. Had a local Eat People's Face Party event. Second generation immigrant who supports reform got hospitalised by going to a Reform Party meet-up and getting beaten up by the racists there. Really? Okay, that's quite shocking still. I thought they knew how to behave themselves at their own meetings, at least. And then they're saying they didn't take it into account into their March budget. That's the definition of fiscal black hole. It is. The only quibble is over, is it fair to call it a £22 billion black hole? That's the only quibble. It was still, and if even then, I think what's the difference people are arguing over? I think it might be 6 to 7 billion or something from memory. No attempted to take advantage of Labour's bad comms. They're taking full advantage. Well, but you would in politics. You would. At the end of the day, in politics, if you're in a political party, you believe that political party is the best party to have, whether for your own self-interest or the country's interest, can be either. So all's fair in love and war type thing takes over, doesn't it? Which is a shame, but it is what it is. They should have to print their apology as the lead story. That would make them a little more careful to avoid embarrassment. But only if they get something absolutely factually incorrect. So if they're trying to distract from the fact that they spent months talking about a black hole that was never there and the Treasury kept denying, then you can't stop that because it was based on speculation. All of the reports I read did say this is according to this group of economists. So they'll just say we were reporting accurately, right? And then on the black hole, if they're saying, oh, the OBR won't say it's 22 billion, it's like, no, but they do say there's a black hole there. But when I think press apologies and corrections should be the same size, same font, same position as the original article. So where they do have to apologise, I also agree. In fact, I would actually say it should by default always be on the front page. And it must take up at least, let's say, 70% of the frontage of that page. The typeface has to take up 50%, shall we say. Allow a picture. Allow a picture there. Someone's mentioned there the no taxes for immigrants seems pointless. It is. It's just another one of these performative bollocks. At the end of the day, immigrants don't get a taxi to go to hospital because it's convenient. It's because you've made them live, or we've made them live somewhere where there's no other way to get there. in other words, it's the only form of public transport to get there. Otherwise, they get a bus like everyone else. If they're not on so put people where there's a bus route then. Give them a bus route so they can make the appointment. That's another just a bit of performative bollocks. And again, it is performative because the public will never notice it. Like, you can announce you're doing it. Do you know what? You can announce you're doing it. The public will... Right, here's the thing. Let's say they do it. No one will notice. None of the racists will notice, right? Because no one's going to tell them that, it's like they've done it. Okay. But if they don't do it, if it turns out they don't do it, like Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage will be straight on it. The next time there's some figures out, they'll say, oh, they're still spending on this thing, so they didn't cut it out after all. So then they just raise the stakes on it again. It's just a pointless thing to do. They just have no idea. Their political operation is just embarrassingly comical. Speaking of embarrassingly comical, I am going to have to... Sorry, the audio keeps cutting out, so I don't know why that is. It looks fine at my end, so it might... is there a problem? It doesn't say... It's not telling me there's a problem with the stream. I wonder why that is. But, comically, I am going to have to... Now, here's where my bias is, right? This is my bias. You'll notice I do videos quite regularly, and I ain't finished, by the way, on when Reform UK embarrass themselves. I've probably got one coming out tomorrow again. We will see. So I'm quite happy to do videos on Reform UK embarrassing themselves. I will do videos on the Tories embarrassing themselves, but I don't do as much of that because no one really cares about them. It's not that they no longer provide entertainment. It's that, the views are just bad for Tory videos most of the time. Like, every now and then there's something that's worth doing. Most of the time it's not. But what you notice is, what I generally don't do is, if it's Labour, then that's a bit different because you have to sort of keep people abreast of what the government's doing. And if it's embarrassing, that's their fault. But I don't like, if the Lib Dems do something embarrassing, I don't really cover it very much. If the Greens do something embarrassing, I don't really point at it. And if this New Your Party does something embarrassing, as they have been doing every week for months now, I don't really mention it. But I am going to have to point at this. So the Your Party debacle, they have their inaugural conference today. It has been an even bigger shit show than I thought it would be. And I thought it would be a shit show. This is the BBC's take on it. Now, I want to point something very important out. This is why I'm going through this. Sultana claims so she refused to turn up, by the way, to her own inaugural conference. So, shit show. Sultana claims new Corbyn party carrying out witch hunt against activists. Now, what is this based on? Well, let's go down. Zara Sultana has accused leading figures in the new party she is founding with Jeremy Corbyn, even though she wasn't there at the foundation, of carrying out a witch hunt to purge left-wing activists. I am going to first of all point out, by the way, that this new Your Party has not... I'm not saying it's not a left-wing group, but I have yet to see it promoting any left-wing policies. Should we just put it that way? And it's all right to say, oh, but they're not going to have policies tied down yet, Phil. It's like, don't talk bollocks. They know what their policies are. Why aren't any of them left-wing policies? But anyway, carry on. Sultana boycotted the first day of the founding conference of the project. Going well. Currently operates under the name Your Party after several members who also belong to the Socialist Workers' Party were expelled, right? Which is perfectly reasonable. Party officials said the expulsions were for breaching rules that ban members for joining any other political party in the UK or abroad. Again, that's standard. But then she says, Sultana's comments came as Corbyn used his conference speech to call for unity. I didn't know Jeremy Corbyn was getting into stand-up comedy, as the party had a unique opportunity to found a socialist party of mass appeal. Absolute bollocks, by the way. They've got a unique opportunity. I'll tell you what the party exists for. This party exists, right? And some of its own people at the top of this party know this. They've pretty much said as much. This party exists as a revenge party. They didn't like the fact that they had control of the largest political party in Europe. The Labour Party, largest political party in Europe, especially under Corbyn, if you measure it by membership, huge membership, right? If Jeremy Corbyn could not turn what was already the largest political party in Europe into a socialist party of mass appeal, what chance has he got with this bucket whip round party, right? But anyway, we'll carry on. She told the BBC, so this is back to Zara Sultana, she told the BBC one of her staff had also been denied a pass for the conference. Your party officials confirmed a pass had not been issued, but denied the decision of being politically motivated. It was 100% politically. Why wouldn't you give Zara Sultana, one of her own staff, a founding member of the party, one of her staff, a pass? Of course you would. Pissing Owen Jones gets a pass to the Labour Party conference, despite the shit he talks about him. I know he got kicked out, but, you know, he got his pass. As long as he'd behaved himself, he would have been fine. So if Owen Jones, who he isn't a journalist, just to be clear, if Owen Jones can get into the Labour Party conference when he is clearly a member of another party, then there is no reason for Zara Sultana's staff not to have a pass, right? So it will 100%, she'll be in the right on this one. But then it says, a spokesperson for Sultana said, this witch hunt is indefensible. We must build a party that welcomes all socialists. But that's fine, as long as they leave their other parties. This is the nonsense of it. This is the nonsense of it all. It is absolutely standard that if you, as a political party, you can't be a member of really two political parties because they compete against each other. The only two political parties in Britain, anyway, the only two political parties that are consistent with being together, it's like Labour and the Cooperative Party. Like, a lot of people don't even know what the Cooperative Party is. So there's the Labour Party and there's the Cooperative Party, right? Two different parties technically, but they share candidates. So they're for all intents and purposes, they're like the same party. So some of Labour's MPs, for example, are actually cooperative MPs. So that, you know, but even then it's like you're not a member of both. You're one or the other. But the idea of being a member of two political parties at once that'll field two different candidates against each other, that's mad. There's even some political groups that are not parties that you can reasonably say being a member of our party whilst being a member of that group is not not compatible. Like in the days of the EDL, for example, I don't think they were ever a political party, just a group. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it would have been perfectly reasonable for Labour to have said, I think they did do, by the way, but I think it would be perfectly reasonable for Labour to say, you cannot be a member of the EDL and the Labour Party, choose. And that's all that happened a few years ago when these people were complaining they were being purged by Labour. No, they weren't. No one was purged by Labour. They were told, you cannot be in two parties at once, choose. And they chose not to be in the Labour Party. They weren't purged, they left because Labour had said, you can't be in multiple parties at once. Your party now, the same people who are whining at Labour for not letting them be in these different groups are now banning anyone in your party from being in these different groups, which is reasonable, by the way. What was unreasonable is them moaning about Labour doing the same thing. But Sultana's going, no, we need all of them. It's like, no, you don't. If Zara Sultana wants these people in your party aren't saying they can't join. They're just saying they have to leave the Socialist Workers' Party or whatever first, or the Socialist Party. There's two. It's the Socialist Party and Socialist Workers' Party that have congregated around Sultana. Your party are not saying that these people can't join. They're saying you can't be in two parties at once, which is reasonable. It's an absolute shit show. It's an absolute shit show. The only reason this party exists is to try and hive off votes from Labour in some of the areas where the Green Party have no impact and won't under Polanski either, in order to help Reform UK in. Why? Because they don't like the fact that they lost two general elections. They don't like the fact that someone else won a general election. And what they want to do is they want Reform UK to win, and they want to be able to say, we did that. They actually want to take credit for Reform UK winning, so that they can say, Labour can't win without us. That's what they want to say for their own egos. They want to inflict a Reform UK government. Some of this is my speculation. Some of them may also believe that another material advantage of Reform UK getting into power is that it will be such a shit show, which it will, that it will swing people over to the hard left, which it won't. But that's what they think. They think that it does them no harm for Reform UK to get in, completely wreck everything, and then the public will turn to another bunch of populist grifters, right? And maybe that will be them. But even if it is, what I would say is that's an incredibly selfish attitude, because the damage that Reform UK will do to this country is beyond anyone's capacity to heal. Like, even in America, best case, I keep saying, best case scenario for America is that next year Congress clips Trump's wings, either whether because of the midterms or preferably because Republicans take matters into their own hands before the midterms, and then someone else wins the presidency after Trump, whether it be the Democrats or even just a normal Republican candidate, not MAGA, right? That's the best case scenario for America. That Trump starts to have his wings clipped in 2026, and that a non-MAGA president enters the White House in, when would it be, 2029? That's best case scenario for America. And even if that happens, it's not going to be able to repair the damage that Trump has already done and will carry on doing for the next few years. It won't repair that damage at all. And the same would happen in this country and Reform UK. No one will repair the damage. It won't be possible. It'll take generations. So there's some damage that, for example, you look at what Labour are doing at the moment, and some of it, even if you gave them 10 or 15 years, wouldn't repair some of the damage the Tories have already done, because some of it's just permanent. That's just it. You can try and go in a different direction, but you can't go back. Too much damage. You burnt the bridges, so you have to find another route. Every party has a rule that you cannot join another party and remain in them. Of course it does. I mean, as I say, it's also common for political parties to have a rule that there are certain incompatible political groups that aren't necessarily parties, but groups that you can't join as well. That is sometimes the case. But it's definitely the case that you cannot be a member of multiple political parties. You know, ones where you're going to be... You cannot play the field on both sides. Corbyn must also take responsibility for Brexit. Yeah, but he wanted Brexit. Along with Boris, Tories, Farage, UKIP, now he can't get on with his own deputy. Well, she's not... I don't know who Zara Sultana is, right? Because I'll tell you what's happening, right? Zara Sultana, a couple of years ago, Zara Sultana was she was never going to make it in Labour to the front bench because she's far too, uncooperative, shall we say. She won't cooperate with other people. She won't collaborate, right? She's too narrow. She's so narrow she can't even get on with your party, which has a really narrow... Like, the people in your party have a really narrow set of beliefs, and apparently that's not narrow enough for Zara Sultana. That's how mad this shit is. But anyway, she was nonetheless a growing personality on the Labour backbenchers. She had a career ahead of her of being a prominent backbencher. Should we put it that way? She was going to be a prominent voice on the backbenchers. The best she could achieve, because she refuses to work with people. Now she's going to end up as some sort of regional campaign manager for the Socialist Workers' Party. She thought she was going to become the I guarantee this is what she thought. She thought, right, I'll bounce Corbyn into forming a new party. We'll be co-leaders, right? Co-leaders. But he's getting on a bit. So I'll lean on his credibility. We'll form the party. We'll get it going. Then he can retire. And then I'll become the leader. That was her plan. I guarantee you that was her plan. That she would then... So her plan was basically to lead an alternative party, right? As being preferable to... She'd prefer to lead a small pond than be a bit player in a big sea, basically. And now, I don't know what her role is. She can still be considered co-founder, I guess, but she didn't even turn up to the foundational conference, or at least the first day. We'll see if she's there tomorrow. I actually don't know how you describe Zara Sultana. Does she have any role in your party other than the fact she seems to have a load of their money? Anyway, catch up with some comments. If you're in Reform, you can be in EDL, the BNP, if you really want to get on Combat 18. Technically, you can't. Well, the EDL, remember, doesn't actually now exist. They all went to Britain first, I think. Technically, you can't on their side. Actually, I don't know about Combat 18, but they have been banned in this country anyway. But in terms of like the BNP, the Reform UK rules do say that you can't. And actually, I think they might even say, shall we have a look? Hold on, let me try and find them again. It might even say that even if you've been a member of the EDL in the past, you can't join. But we do know that there are people who do. We know that Reform UK have members who are actively in like Britain First and groups like that. But in theory, you're not supposed to. It's in their terms and conditions. Let me see if I can find it. Terms and conditions. Here we go. If you've ever been part of the listed proscribed organisations here or currently part of them, you're not eligible to become. So even if you've been in the past, let's have a read of it. So, right, I've got to put this up. Sorry, I haven't seen this list for a while. I've got to put this up for you. This is spectacular, right? Okay, this is Reform UK. And if you've ever been a member of any of these, you're not allowed to join, right? Ever. Antifa. Don't fucking exist. It don't exist. There's no such group. It's a concept, mate. Antifa is a concept. But if you've ever been an anti-fascist is what they're saying. If you've ever been against fascism, you're not allowed in Reform UK. What a message to give out. Sorry, that was a react. I've only just seen that for the first time. Anyway, BNP. So technically, you're not allowed. If you're in the BNP, you're not allowed. If they find out you are, actually, it's not true. If the media find out you are and publish it, then they'll bin you. Britain First, British Democrats, Communist Party of Great Britain, English Defence League, For Britain, Homeland Party, National Action, National Front, Patriotic Alternative, Socialist Workers' Party. You know they've missed off Socialist Party. Socialist Party are even more extreme than the Socialist Workers' Party. Isn't there a Communist Workers' Party in this country as well? Have I got that wrong? Is that somewhere else? I'm going to have to look at that in a minute. But so they've missed a few off. But nonetheless, if anyone highlights the fact, if you're a Reform UK member and anyone highlights the fact that you've been a member of any of these groups, I don't know how you can be a member of Antifa, by the way. I don't know how that works. But anyway, they've said that because that's been added. That has been added relatively recently because that wasn't on the list earlier this year. That'll be because of Trump, won't it? They're just copying Trump because he has prescribed Antifa as a terrorist organisation in America, even though it don't exist as an organisation. So technically, if there's any Reform UK members who have ever been a supporter of any of these groups, technically they should lose their membership. There is a Communist Party, I believe in something of communist myself and Marxist. Well, they've mentioned the Communist Party of Great Britain, but I had an inkling there was another one as well. Let me have a look. I thought there was a communist. But I might be wrong. There's a Workers' Party of Britain, but that's not on there either. There's Communist Workers' Organisation. That's not on there either. So there are actually other communist groups that they haven't included. It's clearly someone's just thrown it together, haven't they? But anyway, nonetheless, in theory, Reform UK do not allow you to be a member of the BNP or a former member of the EDL and join their party. Oh dear, SWP briefly joined for less than a year, then that's me on the prevent watch list. Fair co officer. Well, you can't join Reform UK anyway. Oh dear. You have the Socialist Party of Great Britain. Do you know what? You've got loads of these bit parties because it happens all the time. I cannot tell you enough. I mean, I've been around these people because I am someone who has for all my adult life been very left wing, right? So inevitably you end up in and around these groups. So from a very relatively young age, I learned that these people have, they're so absolutist. Like you've got to agree with them to the nth degree. Like there's no room for deviation. So what happens is you get a group, right? And so Labour, right? The first left-wing party in this country that had a realistic shot of anything was the Labour Party, of course. Now, it went through a lot of growing pains, decades of messing about, and we ended up, the Labour Party as we understand it today is basically the Labour Party that emerged in the late 1930s, right? That entered government, first of all, as a government of national unity under Churchill, and then won power in its own right in 1945. So, but since then, what happens is Labour Party in power they don't go far enough, right? They don't go far enough, so a group splits off. They form their own party. Then that party can't agree with each other, so they split up into two other parties. Then those two other parties can't agree with each other, split up into more parties, like a chain reaction. So by now, there's probably like 1 million of these parties. We're going to get to a point where everyone on the hard left is in a party of one person before we're done. That's where we're going to end up. So this Your Party, I don't see Zara Sultana sticking around in it. I think she's just at the moment trapped. Which one is Galloway's party? Oh, shit. Can't remember. But that's not on there either. That's the Workers' Party, isn't it? Not the Socialist Workers' Party. Just the Workers'... Is it? I think... Hold on. Can't remember. It doesn't matter. He'll come crawling out the woodwork at some point in the future, but hopefully not for a while. Judean People's Front. But that Monty Python skit in Life of Brian, that skit was taking the piss out of like hard left groups. That's what it was taking the piss out. The whole thing with the Judean People's Front was literally a satire on very left-wing groups because they can't agree on anything. And then someone has a slight disagreement. So what is Zara Sultana's slight disagreement, right? It's the fact that she's given the impression anyway that she's socially progressive. Remember, there was a big blowout over trans issues. There's other bones of contention between Sultana and Corbyn. But in terms of their political issues, it's that a lot of people on the hard left are not socially progressive. When I've said in the past, you know, you've got a lot of people on the left in this country. A lot of people think left is synonymous with socially progressive. No, it ain't. There's loads of people on the left that are socially conservative. And you can see this in the countries' governments they support. If you look at Corbyn, look at the governments he has supported, not in this country, obviously, but around the world. Look at the governments he's supported. They're all of them socially conservative, all of them. So Corbyn and a lot of people around Corbyn, they'll sometimes say they are, just to try and win votes. But if you look at actual governments that they have supported, they're all socially conservative, every one of them. They don't have a good word to say for any liberal government. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, by all means. But I cannot remember them ever showing any support for any government that wasn't authoritarian. The proposed new names, oh, that's right, they're going to be voting on it, aren't they? The proposed new names of Your Party include Your Party, Our Party, Popular Alliance, and For the Many. Oh. Which one would I go for? Just for the meme. Because what you'd want to do, right, is you'd want to pick the one where, because it'll have an acronym. If it's Your Party, it's YP. If it's Our Party, it's OP. Which they shouldn't be allowed to be called that, because OP in gaming vernacular means overpowered. They are very far from overpowered. Popular Alliance would be PA, and For the Many would be FTM. So you'd want the one that you can then use the acronym to mean something fairly derogatory, just for a bit of fun. And they're saying, tragically, I discover I'm unable to join Reform UK Limited because I don't want to. Well, yes, you and me both there. And I am available. I'm free to join them. I qualify. I haven't been a member of, I'm not a member of any political party at the moment, and I haven't been a member of any of these proscribed organisations, at least one of which is not an organisation and never has been. OP in Reddit means original poster. That's true. Yes, social media parlance, it means original poster. Yeah, true. Everything is a mess at the moment. Labour don't like to admit this, but it was birthed from the Labour Representation Committee of the Liberal Party, all the top people. But all parties have come like, no one goes from not being political to making a political party. So technically, any political party has by definition been formed by people who know how to organise a political party, which means they came from another one. I don't know that anyone in Labour is ashamed of that. Maybe now because there's nothing liberal about the Labour government we have at the moment. But the party itself is very much split, as I say. You've got socially progressive people, you've got socially regressive people in it. At the moment, the socially regressive are in the ascendancy. I just have to make peace with the fact that there will probably never be, and I've made peace with it, if I'm honest, years ago. There'll never be a Labour Party that's broadly aligned with me. Because, you know, you can't have everything. The Labour Party of my youth, relative youth, when I was an early adult, young adult, I should say, I suppose, was socially liberal, so that aligned with me. Although I will say, actually, if I'm going to be honest, I have become more socially liberal as I've got older. So I may not have, I would still have probably been described as mostly socially liberal. I was very little live and let live, should we put it that way? That's fairly socially liberal when I was young. But I have become more liberal as I've got older. Whereas that less Labour, so that was aligned with me. Whereas economically, they were, I mean, they were very centrist. It's very difficult to say left because they made no effort to increase the amount of public assets. You know, what public investment there was, and there was public investment, went hand in hand quite often with private investment, which I wasn't a fan of. Even though I understood arguments for it, I'd still say on balance, I don't agree with it. Whereas now, we do have a government that is increasing the level of genuine state investment that's not side by side with private investment. So, you know, we are increasing the level of state-owned assets, not just train companies, but it's socially regressive. And it is regressive. It's not just that it's not going forwards, it is actually going backwards. So, you know, apparently you can't have one without the other. You can't have both, apparently. Can't have left-wing and liberal, apparently. Never mind. Wasn't Zara Sultana's break with Labour because she and others in Labour voted to eliminate the two-child benefit cap and the leadership retaliated against them? No. She did vote against it, and she did have the whip removed, but she would have had it back by now, as the others have. So, no, that wasn't the reason. The reason was because she thought she would rather be the leader of a small party than a bit player in a big party. Pure ego. Just ego. Because she, unless she's thick, and I don't think she is thick, she cannot possibly think that this Your Party is ever going to get anywhere near power. All it can do is act as a leech on Labour. It can leech left-wing votes away from Labour, allowing in right-wing governments. The reason, I will remind you, no matter what period of time you look over in British history, the reason why the Conservatives have been in power for the majority of that time is not because the country is essentially a right-wing minded country. It's only slightly left-wing. There's no point in going mad about it, but it is slightly centre-left. The reason why the Conservatives have won power more than even all the others combined, even if you lump like the Whigs, the Liberal Party, and Labour together as an amalgamation, the Conservatives have ruled for way longer than those combined together. And the reason for that is they don't have their vote split. Now, you might think they are now having their vote split with Reform UK, but that is because the Conservatives are nowhere and Reform UK are a rebranded Tory party. Now, if the right wing thought that the Conservatives could win power in the near term, they would drop Reform UK immediately. The press would stop reporting on them and all the rest of it. So, yeah, the right wing have ruled for so long because they were very careful to unite rather than split the vote, whereas the left split and split and split and split. Aren't the Green left wing and socially liberal? Difficult to say. They are socially liberal. But if you look at the Green Party in power, would you really say it's left-wing? I know it talks a good left-wing game, but is it? It's quite NIMBY in power, and it's led by a leader who was pro-austerity. So they say they are, but are they? Also, when I said left-wing liberal, I meant in government. I didn't mean that there's no left-wing liberal parties in existence. I actually said, in terms of forming a government, the Green Party ain't going to form a government. You give them 30 years, they ain't going to form a government. The best the Green Party can hope for is that they may be able to form a coalition, maybe become a coalition partner if we had electoral reform, just like they did in Germany. While it's possible she may have a big ego, big enough ego to believe she can lead party to victory, I strongly suspect that's not true. I think most people in your party, the people at the top of it, I think they know that they're basically a revenge party. Because it's supposed to be a socialist party, right? They keep going about socialism. How come they haven't actually said anything about socialism? They've commented on all sorts of things. They haven't commented on anything that's socialist. I'm not saying they're not socialist, by the way. What I'm saying is socialism is not a priority for these people. Because all of their causes, none of them are socialist causes. None of them. All of their big causes, the things they put their shoulders behind, none of them are socialist causes. First past the post has helped the Tory party measurably. Yes. Because the right wing understand unity is essential to win, right? Ironically, now here's the thing, of course, if we had a proportional system, does that mean that the left would win most of all? Maybe still not even then, but they would have won power more often. They'd probably have to, any credible left wing party of government would they'd probably get on better with the Lib Dems than other left-wing ones, ironically, because the left will just keep splitting and splitting and splitting. Badura is saying, where's their funding? Russia. Who's funding? Your party? I doubt it. Now, your party at the moment, you can't rule it out, but at the moment it's probably just come from memberships. I don't think, because they're not set up yet, so I don't think they can even take donations yet. I'm not sure. And even if they now can, because I don't know, I think they have they formally registered? They haven't even got a name yet, so they can't formally register with the Electoral Commission, can they? And until they can't take donations. And when they can, there'll still be some time before we have to see those donations listed. Because if you donate more than a certain amount, you have to be named. Despite McDonnell being a Corbynist, he was the only one I respected. He's intelligent enough not to jump on the YP bandwagon. I did as well, because he only because he's the only one without an ego. It doesn't mean to say he's not an idiot still. I don't think it's his intelligence. I think he's just not got an ego. So he, like Ed Miliband, he accepts he can be wrong about things. But he was still insanely stupid when he was Shadow Chancellor. And he still has been since. He was basically invited to be on the policy group under Starmer and refused. It's not that he was on it and he was going, oh, it's not like he was on this committee and constantly being overruled by everyone else and thought, sod it, I'm not doing anything good here, I'll piss off, right? No, he just refused. He was invited to join it and refused. Like, at the end of the day, Sultana's on a massive grift. Yes, you know, she could have done plenty just being an MP. She was probably going to be an MP for life. Nice safe seat. She could get to attack Labour all day long. They would never boot her out of the party because, unlike with the Conservatives, they don't really do that unless you do something really horrendous. So, you know, she was probably going to be a Labour MP for life. Massive pain in the arse for future Labour leaders, but Labour MP for life. That's plenty of money. Nice big. She's young. She could do that till pretty late in life and have a massive pension. I remind people you get like 1 out of something like 51 share. So if you're an MP for 40 years, you get a nice pension. Supporting Ukraine was the moment the Corbynistas soured on McDonald. Well, you say that. They did sort of split a little. So you have this group in Labour called the Socialist Campaign Group, the SCG. It's sort of like the Tories' ERG, only it weren't organised enough to like take over. Even when they took over, when they actually took over the leadership, they still were too disorganised to take over, right? But you have this SCG, right? And it was the full scale invasion of Ukraine that split them up. So several members of the group then distanced themselves. So they did sort of split a bit. And there was others as well. Nadia Whittam, Clive Lewis as well. They split off from them because at the end of the day, they're not, you know, they're not themselves supporters of authoritarian imperialist dictatorships. You know, whereas what you call the Corbynistas there, I mean, I would say the Corbynistas are a little bit split on it. But if we talk about the sort of anti-Western Corbynistas, they are, again, if you ask them to name governments that they approve of, every single one of them is an authoritarian dictatorship. Even if it's in technically a democracy. Like Russia has elections, right? But you can't call it a democracy. R.I.P. Tom Stoppard. Yeah, I've never actually seen any of Stoppard's work, but he's famous enough that I know who he is. But anyway. Bad Enoch polling, relatively more popular. She and her party are now considered irrelevant. Also, I would say, you know, we were used to every single PMQs. It would just, Kemi Badenoch would just embarrass herself. But Labour have just given her too many opportunities these days. And here's the thing, like this, I know someone, I can't remember, someone here, I'm sure it was said that, you know, sort of very soon we'll end up with Nigel Farage, Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch all being removed from the leadership of their party. Whereas, I mean, first of all, not with Nigel Farage. He owns the party, so that will never happen. Even if he becomes deeply unpopular and an electoral, even if Nigel Farage becomes a clear electoral liability, he owns the party. I'm sorry, he owns the party. That's all there is to it. But in terms of Badenoch and Starmer, if one looks in danger, the other looks safer. So arguably the fact that Starmer looks more vulnerable now gives Badenoch some breathing room. So I don't think there'd be a move against Badenoch before the elections anyway. Right? There wouldn't be, because why would you get someone new in just before the local elections and then you're still going to do badly in those local elections and then you've sort of tainted their leadership straight from the off? You might as well make Badenoch responsible for this, for next year's local and devolved elections and then get rid of her after that. However, they may even wait a bit there, because if Labour get rid of Starmer, then the Tories will keep Badenoch, right? Because at the end of the day, it is always damaging replacing your leader mid-term. It makes sense if they resign after losing an election, because that's normal, that's not chaotic, that's fine. But if you get rid of them mid, I suppose you also get away with it if you get rid of them within, when there's like a year to the election to go, and the current leader's really unpopular, because then that looks like you're just taking care of business. But if you get rid of the mid-parliament, that is damaging. That's always damaging. And you don't inflict that on yourself unless you have to. So if it looks like they'll be getting rid of Starmer, the Conservatives will think to themselves, well, hang on a minute, Labour could just tear themselves apart here. Let's just see. And they'll probably give her more time. They'll give her another half a year or a year or something. Puninator may win his bet. Tories have gained some ground in Reform UK in recent weeks. Well, Reform UK have fallen back. And remember, most of the votes that went to Reform UK were from the Tories anyway. So that would sort of make sense there. A French general has warned Europe could be at war with Russia in a year. We're at war with them now. Is this hyperbole, or should UK defence chiefs do the same? I'm pretty sure there have been some defence chiefs around Europe. I think there's an ex-British defence chief who, correct me if I'm wrong, has said that we are already at war with Russia. We are engaged in a hybrid war with Russia, only we're not telling our population this, and we should be. Anyway, what's going on with the sound? Been buffering every few seconds throughout the stream. Sorry, I don't know. I will finish the stream anyway. At my end, it's not giving me any warnings that there's any issue with the stream. Like sometimes if it detects that there's an issue, but there we go. Should be joining the EU in defence matters. Yeah, well, we can't. We can't. We've actually been blocked from that. Again, largely from France. They're acting in their own national interest. We've discussed this before a few weeks ago, didn't we? You can blame France, if you like, for not putting the continent's security ahead, because we should be combining all of the biggest defence manufacturers in Europe. We should be putting them all on the same side, and we're not doing. And yes, you could say that, because what happened is, for those who don't know, so the EU said we could join for like €6 billion, which is far too much. And it's believed that the reason why that €6 billion tag was in the first place was so that it was from members who didn't want the UK to be part of it, but also didn't want to make out that they were doing it for like national interest reasons. So they just said, well, they can join for this fee, but it was an utterly ridiculous fee. So yeah. But again, ultimately, this comes. You can blame France as much as you like, or maybe some other countries that might be involved in it. This is ultimately our fault for leaving. If we had not left the EU, we would be in a better position. We would be in a better place to fund more defence spending, and we would have access to this fund. The fund might even be more than €150 billion, right? But nonetheless, we would be part of it. So ultimately, this is our fault for not being in the EU. Really all there is to it. Any more AV rumours? No, I wouldn't expect there to be any soon. It's the sort of thing that if it's going to happen, I reckon you wait till about 2027, but probably early 2027. Russia had little left to fight a conventional war. Oh, yeah. No experienced soldiers do have massive stocks of dodgy nukes, which they may or may not be able to launch. And if they tried, they may or may not fall back down to the ground and blow Moscow up. Not that they'll launch them anywhere near Moscow. They're not that stupid, I suspect. But yeah, I mean, we are effectively already in a hybrid war with Russia. And really, people just need making aware of that. And if there's going to be some people going, oh, you just saber rattling, I don't give a shit, because at the end of the day, the sabers are rattling. What branch of the service did I serve in? None. I was in final year of secondary school in 99. Things were a lot better under Blair and Brown. They were hugely better. They were a lot better in 2010 than they were just a few years later. That's why people voted for Brexit. And yes, my war zone was indeed a classroom. But there we go. We'll leave it there. Thanks very much for coming on, everyone. Have a great rest of evening. And until next time, I'll see you later.